Board Game Homies. We're a group of friends, play, review, and share about all things board games. Sitting around the table today are
Reed,
Becky,
Gillian,
and I'm Angela, and today we're talking about Kanban EV, aka I am so excited for this meeting. But first, what's bringing you joy?
I recently did a family reunion with some East Coast family at Cannon Beach in Oregon, and inspired by Angela, played some trick-taking games and learned a new one, Euchre, which I know is a classic trick-taking game, but my cousin's family absolutely loves it, plays it all the time. They're completely fluent in it. Their children are fluent in it. They taught me how to play. I proceeded to lose not only every single game or every single hand that I played, but every single game that my partner and I played too. So I'm not very good at it, but I was so excited by this idea of taking tricks and planning out and kind of intuiting what your partner is doing that I was dreaming about it after playing it, and I want to keep playing it.
Is it played with a regular deck of cards?
It is, yes. You actually kind of abbreviate the deck of cards and just take cards 9 through 12, 9 through ace.
9 through ace, yes. I don't think there's 12s. I think there's kings, yeah.
9 through ace, and you use the 4 and the 6 to take score, but you don't incorporate those into your hands. And there's a suit that trumps, and one of the things that's interesting is that you choose to play a suit and you call the suit for your partner, which I clearly did wrong every time and just decided not to call it. And you think about how you do it if you have high cards in that suit, or the blacks and the black suits go together and the red suits go together, and that their jacks switch suits. And so if you are playing trump as the spades, then the black club jack is actually counts as a spade. So it counts as a trump card.
Wow.
It sounded much more complicated when I was saying that.
It did, but I like these games from my childhood. We used to play Gin Rummy, which isn't, is it a trick-taking game? No. But games that are played with a simple deck of cards is something I think we forget about in the board gaming world, how easy a game can be played with just a hand of cards. Mm-hmm. And how many games have been created around that 52-card deck.
Exactly, and I thought that it was really approachable. We had a ton of decks of cards and could break out and play different games. We actually just played Euchre the whole time, but in the past we played Spades, which is my favorite trick-taking game, but Euchre is really interesting how much you can do in 5 hands.
are you going to teach us how to play?
We don't play card games, although Becky and I have a side hustle of cribbage at some point, but I would love to play Euchre with you all.
Now, the real question is, did you also lose to the children?
Angela.
What?
Oh, 100%.
Oh,
and then
okay.
I dragged one of them down with me, and they were getting a little salty, and nobody wanted to be my partner. They're like, I'm sorry you keep losing. And I was like, well, this is how I'm going to win, is by learning the game. And then they were like, yeah, you're not playing very well.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Maybe it was just bad hands.
I love you getting ridiculed by children. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I can just
I
imagine
mean, they're
it.
older children, but definitely still ridiculing.
Yeah, anybody under the age of 18 laughing and pointing at you is, I find funny. Speaking of trick-taking games, I got to live my best life over my birthday and go to the convention for the Portland Game Collective, and it was super amazing. I was so afraid to meet people and put myself out there, and everyone was so nice and wonderful. They were the kindest people. I immediately met someone because I went by myself. My partner was like, absolutely not. And he kind of like pulled me over. We started playing games. I appreciated that he himself was a queer person of color and that I'm a queer person of color. And so that was really wonderful to find safety almost immediately. And we kind of hung out. We were able to pull other people into our games that we played. And it just felt like the vibes were really good. I was sad that I only went for a single day. But they had so many games that people just brought that are these really expensive, hard to find games. And they just labeled them and left them out for everybody to play. There was like this really welcoming environment of sharing and bringing people into the gamescape. And I saw some really cool stuff. So I saw an original copy of Scout, which I thought was really cool. I played a game called Twinkle Starship, where you get these little sticks And the cards, they're all trick takers, but the cards look like an old analog alarm clock. And you know how the numbers are like those really red lines, and you put pieces of these wooden pieces on them. So a 3 turns into an 8 if you have 2 wooden pieces. So you're trying to match the number that you have left of wooden pieces to the number of tricks you can win. And it was like, I was like, oh my God, this is so like fun.
I am so interested in that game. I had one of those clocks growing up, and all night long I'm very into math, that I would imagine what it would be like to move those. And I'm very excited that there's a game that exists like that.
Yeah, it was really cool. There's a game that's just releasing. A lot of these games were hard to find, so I played. I'm not super going to talk about some of the Japanese-only imports that they're not even imports. They all had like Japanese language text that my friend kind of looked up. My burgeoning friend found the English language directions for on BGA, and we played. So there was a really cool one where you played tricks, but it was like Tetris, and it was super fun, except he's like, you can never get this game. They did a super small limited run on it. And I was like, what a bummer, but I was excited to be able to play it in that moment. There is a game that Bazier Games, Gillian's like, that's correct, is releasing called Xylotar, which is got a what are they? It's got a bear on it with one of those Xylotar guitars on it from the 80s. That's like a keytar kind of thing going on.
That's a Xylotar.
That's a Xylotar. Yeah, a keytar is a Xylotar. But it was really awesome because the cards were like musical note keys, and each color represented a certain set of numbers. So if it was pink, they were cards 0 to 4. If it was green, it was cards 0 to 7. And so you would arrange cards in order from smallest to largest, and then you would give that hand away. And without looking at the hand, you had to put it down in front of you, and that's how you had to win tricks. So you had to use the power of deduction for what was smallest to largest in your hand based on colors and where they were. And you'd flip something over and you'd be like, oh my God, that's a 2? That must mean all of these cards are 0s and 1s. So you knew you weren't going to win a lot of tricks. And it just was really interesting. It made your brain work in a way that is so much different than regular board games that we play. I played Yokai Septum, which is releasing fairly soon. That was a fun trick-taking one. Very anime-esque images and holograms. There was a game called Hipparchus. I'm going to say that wrong. Hipparchus. A delightful human named Issa slaughtered me at it, and I think it broke my brain and what was left of it. And it was all they are like suns, moons, and a planet. There's no numbers. So like, how do you play a trick-taking game with no numbers, just 3 images? I was like, oh no, this is terrible. And then also a game that just released, Pray Another Day, which has these really beautiful like Technicolor like images, and you can play as definitely a good party game. It's heavily luck based, but it has you can either be, you play this hand of cards. Everyone has the same hand of cards. There's a bear, there's a wolf, there's a lynx, there's an owl, and a mouse, and everyone plays the same, or everyone plays a card at the same time face down. If you played a bear, which is the highest on the prey counter, you get to name an animal and then eat that animal. But if somebody names the same, so there are 2 bears, the bears fight each other and they don't eat anything. So you're trying to like figure out which prey you want to be and what you can eat, and it's whoever has the last card standing kind of wins. And so then the person who is a wolf goes, and a lynx goes, and an owl goes, and the mouse doesn't eat anybody, but you get the most points if you get it.
So no bear pairs. No Cascadia bear pairs.
Absolutely no bear pairs, Reed. But there were just so many different games that I never would have explored on my own. Like, at all.
I'm super interested in the collecting aspect of games. And did you talk with any of the collectors?
No, people were really unique about the games that they had. And there's this trend that some folks have where they take their small box games, remove the boxes, and then put them in these like little seed plastic holders so that they can just travel with them easier. And the thought of getting rid of my boxes gave me palpitations. And so I was like, maybe they just have them in a box underneath their bed or something like that. But no, I didn't talk to people about how they collected. but there must be a Discord server for the Portland Game Collective, because some folks were talking about, like, here's how you find games, and here's folks that go to the Tokyo Game Market, and how you could kind of find some of these rare, expensive games. And I don't know, trying something new filled me with so much joy, and playing games I never would have been brave enough to play. And I definitely wouldn't pay like $75 to play this game that only contains 5 or 6 cards or something. And you're like, but this is so much money. I wouldn't pay this. But I was glad I got to experience the joy from other people.
Angela, I am so proud of you for being so brave. And your excitement makes me excited to try that convention out next year. Or is it a convention?
Yeah, it's like a little mini convention. There were about 50 people when I went, coming and going. So that was a decent size of people all playing together. It was intense, everybody playing. I was like, this is great.
Speaking of living your best life on your birthday, I'm going to force these 3 to play Root with me. We mentioned previously on the pod, I think Reed had mentioned it as her game that's bringing her joy. But now it's bringing me joy with the anticipation of actually playing it. So I mentioned previously that Becky and I had a really weird experience with Root 5 years or so ago that wasn't exactly great, so it kind of turned us off from the game. I'm excited to pick it back up and fight over the woodlands and become the most successful woodland creature to actually dominate the woodland. But I'm looking forward to that because I think the time in between plays has really given me time to look at it with a different lens. And it seems like it's a game that would be up my alley, and I ended up buying it on a whim just because I was excited to try it again. Nobody owned it. And so getting that table is something that's been high on my list, and it's a game that's going to require some forethought and learning. And Reed ended up sending a message earlier this week saying, who are we playing, so I can study who my faction and all that stuff. So we figured out who we're playing, and I'm excited to get that to the table.
I also had this like imaginary hope that we all would dress as our animals.
Girl, absolutely not. You need to let that dream go.
Your clothes could at least be color coordinated with your faction.
Yeah, green, blue, orange, and
I'm some weird toast. I don't know what
I was like, girl, I come over to this house in sweatpants and a t-shirt. I'm like not gonna cosplay my colors. I am excited that I get to be the cats.
Yeah, Marquis de Cat.
Marquis de Cat. It sounds very fancy, but I'm a little bit worried having to have it be so asymmetrical that I'll have to find videos that play the cats while still having a well-rounded understanding of all of the other factions, so that I know how Becky is screwing me over.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. This is going to by far be the most asymmetric game we've played as a group, so it'll take some learning, that's for sure.
I'm excited to see if we fall in the absolutely love it or absolutely hate it camp, because I don't know. In all the content that I've been devouring, I haven't seen anybody in the middle on it.
Ooh, and will we all feel the same way about it?
Ooh.
Gillian, I also want to give you bonus points that you didn't run out and immediately buy all of the expansions for Root. I thought that was, even though it's your birthday, that you had put some self-control in how many expansions you would play before we all...
I bought one expansion. And that's only because it makes it better for 2-player, but the Becky and I still haven't played it. So.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. That one I knew about. But I was like, oh, girl, no.
Yeah.
You're like, here's all the upgraded pieces. Here's the 8 expansions I bought. We've never played it. So it's hilarious.
We'll see. After the first play, it'll be telling to see how fast I run out and buy any expansions.
So true.
Very true.
I am kind of cheating this week, and I was trying to think of what my joy game is, and I'm sad. The look on Angela's face right now makes me feel bad about feeling sad.
Yeah, I'm like so shooketh. I was like, why is Becky sad? We didn't talk about this beforehand.
I know, I was holding on to this. I'm sad because when I was looking at the board game stat app, We've only played 10 games in the last 30 days.
Wow.
That is shocking.
Yeah, I mean, I think Angela and I have played maybe 2 games, 2 or 3 other than that, and Reed's been playing games with her family, but...
Yeah, Reed and Angela went on vacation, and now Becky and I are going to go on vacation, so it's a rough summer.
People are working.
God, our jobs are absolutely getting in the way
I
of
know.
our
There's so many
It's a
things getting in the
problem.
way of board game summer. It's just not happening.
board game summer. This is why when we live in Eugene and it rains, everybody has to be forced inside. So we're like, we must have community with each other now.
Yes.
I mean, it's not like any of us aside from Reed are actually going outdoors. It's just other things that are keeping us busy.
That's kind of true.
We're still an inside people.
But with that, I am excited that Reed and Gillian have birthdays coming up, which means we are going to be spending a lot of time together playing lots of games, or at least lots of hours of games.
So, Becky, the thing that is bringing you joy is the hope that you'll play more games with your friends?
Yes. But also, I'm still sad we've only played 10 games.
Oh my gosh. Kanban EV plays 1 to 4 players and is designed by Vital Lacerda. The art is by Ian O'Toole, and it's published by Eagle-Gryphon Games. It came out in the year 2020 and retails for $121 American dollars. It's previously published as Kanban Driver's Edition in 2014. So, how do we play Kanban EV? At its heart, it's a worker placement game where you have a single worker visiting 5 different departments: R&D, assembly, logistics, design, and administration. And here you can gather designs, get parts, assemble cars, and test different designs. Each department, including admin, allows you to increase your training to become certified. This allows for a precarious decision space of balancing training with moving your manufacturing goals forward. Without outpacing your colleagues in training, you will fall behind and be reprimanded by your supervisor, Sandra. The game ends when you've completed a mix of 5 end-of-day meetings where you talk about your completed goals, or you've gone through Sandra's end-of-the-week evaluations and scoring. Guys, what'd you think about Kanban EV?
The components of this game are amazing. The colors are beautiful. They're really bright. I love how they go together. I think in the second game, every time our player pieces were like stacked on the victory point track, I just was like, oh, I love those 2 colors together. It's so beautiful. And then 2 more, oh, look at those 2 colors. They're so pretty. So they did such a great job with the colors, and they're not like the shade of purple and the shade of blue and the yellow you don't see in a lot of games, I think. And the components of the game, like the cars, they all have different styles and different colors, and it's just very beautiful. Feels very upgraded.
I agree. This game, like anything Ian O'Toole does and puts pen to paper, just looks gorgeous. Like, this game is very expensive. I'm not going to lie. $121, again, is so much money to put down on a board game. And yet, I don't see where they've scrimped around on anything. Even the holder for the box is really well thought out and put together. The boards are thick and beautiful. It has small cards, which I hate, but are still really well designed and produced. I love that the cars are different. When you compare this to the older Driver's Edition, it looks phenomenally better. I just was really blown away and felt like at the end of playing the game, and we didn't play with the metal cars or those upgrades, but it certainly had the weight and heft of a game that would cost you $100 for sure.
Yeah, and that's the standard for Eagle-Gryphon Games. All of their games are very well produced. They're all essentially deluxe editions of some sort. Vital Lacerda games in particular are all very gorgeous, given Ian O'Toole's art. And yeah, this one is no exception. It's gorgeous. It's very well laid out too. One thing I really appreciate about Ian O'Toole and Vital Lacerda games are the layout of the boards all makes sense. It's generally very clear as to where certain things are. My only gripe on the kind of aesthetics of the game is sitting on the side of it. I feel like I often got confused which certification went with which department. And so I was predicting that Sandra was going to evaluate me for this department when she was actually evaluating me for the one below it. And so that was the only gripe I had. Very minor overall, but
It definitely wasn't just from sitting on the side. I had the same experience on the bottom of the board.
Yeah, and I think that's because the departments have these, like, it's kind of like this outstretched line that ties your piece into that board. And for some reason, the department's on the left and then the outstretched rectangle's on the right. So you almost put the pieces with the department that's on the right, but it's actually connected to the department on the left. And it was like, you were like, oh, where am I going? What am I doing? But yeah, very minor still.
Minor until Sandra deducts you 20 points.
I have a feeling that was just because of you.
That was my first game. I could never figure out where she was going and struggled with that.
This was our first experience with a Vital Lacerda game, and I personally was very, anxious to play it, given the reputation that Vital Lacerda makes some very heavy games. One of the heaviest games we played, really, I think, next to Age of Innovation and Terra Mystica. And so I was nervous to get into his designs. But then once we played, after we were done playing, or I should say midway through the first play, I felt that it was all very logical. It all made sense. It wasn't very difficult, really, to understand. Everything flowed really well. And so overall, it was just a very pleasant worker placement experience. You only have a single worker. You're going from one department to another. You can never go to the same department twice. And so the decision space, while complex in a way, is fairly restricted to a good degree. So it's not as complicated as I thought going in, and I appreciated that.
Yeah, I think it had a really large, just stepping back and what it took to prepare for playing this game was quite a few watch it played playthroughs for me of trying to understand. And then I like to do that and then read the rule book and then go back to a video afterwards. And the rule book was beautifully laid out. I had little Post-it notes for things that I thought might come up just from a technical point. We still played with some of the rules wrong on our first play because there's just a lot of rules. So it's not complicated. It's just you want to make sure you've done everything within a sequence to make sure that you're playing the game right. And so I think once that was done, there was just really a flow to it. It really made sense. And I think that's what they talk about with this game is this is one of his games that makes a lot of sense. You get a car plan, you get parts, you go to manufacture the car, you test the car out. But it also has this other decision space of what am I going to get for my end game bonuses? How is that going to be a multiplier? And even deciding what department to go to next was also a decision space because your opponents, your friends, your coworkers may decide to shank you and take the department you want to go to because they get to make that decision before you. And therefore, it's not as simple as go to A, go to B, go to C. It's like, oh, Becky screwed me, then Reed screwed me, and then Sandra screwed me. Gillian didn't screwed me, but Gillian's got all of these stupid books to train, so I hate him anyway. And so I thought that decision space was really interesting about how your friends got in your way.
If you weren't at the bottom of the board in the administration area, you wouldn't have to see all of us go before you. Just going to throw that out there.
Yeah, the decision space in terms of where to go is really interesting. Sandra added quite the element to the worker placement component. It was interesting having a passive, kind of autonomous character go through and just evaluate you and crush your hopes. But it was also a way to manipulate the training so that you ended up sicking Sandra on one of your coworkers instead. I did that once where I ended up going up this training track, so Reed was the only one in the last space, and so Reed got caught the ire of Sandra.
I loved how much thinking was in this game. We were competing with each other and the positioning. We were competing for the end goals, the ability to build capacity through getting speech bubbles to do better in the end of round scoring, do better in the end game scoring, and then deal with this Sandra element where there was this weighing of, is it better to take a turn here? And the way that you do turns is that you pay for shifts. and some people had more shifts than other people, and you couldn't exceed 4 shifts in a period. So you were limited to no more than 4 turns or 4 plays within a turn. And there's so much that you had to think about. And I found myself really weighing, is it worth it taking a turn here to screw somebody over this, or to make sure I wasn't the last on the training, or taking a look and saying, like, is the penalty that bad right now, or will I be affected by the penalty if I'm not up on my training?
I thought there was a nice narrative storyline. Like the theme of this game, again, my partner was watching me set up the board before everybody came over. She goes, so you're going to play a game about middle management, which is literally your job. And I was like, yeah. And you go to these meetings and you spend your speech bubbles because you're talking about, like, the way that the book describes it is the speech bubbles you get is because you're describing your progress to Sandra. And you're like, and then you get less points the farther down on the card you go because Sandra's kind of tired of hearing about the same project over again. And I was like, ooh, girl, that is so good. And the rule book has this whole thing where Sandra starts and she's like, you will do this job right. I am here to make sure that you do not mess it up and you will get to your trainings. And Sandra is named after Vital's wife, who he thinks in the book. And I just thought everything narratively had a story and a tie to it that was really wonderful in this automotive factory, because this isn't an economic market. You're not selling these cars. Like, the idea behind Kanban is to be as efficient. It was rolled out in Toyota factories first, or I think is one of the first times it was rolled out, which is kind of nice that this game is about cars, and it's a system of efficiency. And this game is about a system of efficiency, and the theme carries through. And I experienced Kanban a lot when I worked for Starbucks, and the philosophy of, like, being efficient with all of your moves. And isn't that what board games kind of are? Like, trying to be as efficient as you can, score as many points as you can with the limited turns that you have. And the narrative through lines, it's weird to say a manufacturing car game about efficiencies would be heavily thematic, but I did. I mean, the meeple of Sandra sits there with her little clipboard, and she's taller than you. And she's really, like, hovering over you, checking your work. And you have these little training books that were just delightfully crafted and wooden, and,
They're very thick manuals.
They're very thick manuals, and the reason you get them is to do extra training. So Sandra won't be upset at you because she knows you're working hard, and you're actually penalized less if you have more banked shifts because she knows you're going to work harder.
Yeah, but it's a trap. It's like Sandra does not want you to focus solely on training. You actually have to do the work, because I went deep in training, which was great. I got all the speech bubbles. I got my choice of all of the bonuses that you get for getting certified first. And then at the end of the game, she took it all away. And then everybody else who did training after me got victory points. And so I missed out on like 20 victory points because I peaked too soon.
You were a brown noser, Reed.
I know. But that taught us not to go too deep into that. So then the next game that we played 2 back-to-back games. I was continually, like, straddling that, want to be forward, but not all the way there.
Yeah, it was interesting, the bonuses that you get at the end of each of the certification tracks. Whoever gets there first, if all 3 other players get there after you, you will get 0 points, because it goes in sequence from the top of the stack to the bottom, from 5, 3 to 1 point. So if you're the 4th one in a 4-player game that's on the bottom, you're getting 0 points. So as Reed did, she peaked too early. She jumped on that space first, and then everybody piled on top of her little disc and basically prevented her from getting any points. And so that was an interesting game of chicken in a way as the game progressed, because I found myself in the second game just going midway up the last 3 spaces and just waiting for somebody else to go there. Then I could just, follow suit and jump on there and actually get more points. And so that was a really interesting thing to try to weigh amongst all the other things that were happening.
But that was also risk-taking, too, because you got caught a couple times where you couldn't do that.
Yep.
And it's a game of balance, right? Reed maybe went to those spots first, but that means she got first pick of the only 3 bonuses that were there. And she got the speech bubble that was a one-time bonus for getting the completion. And speech bubbles aren't easy per se to get. There's only a limited amount of them in the game. So like I think later the next game you didn't have as many speech bubbles maybe as you had that first one when you were like racking them up from getting everything. It seemed like a game of balance on those tracks.
I felt much more balanced the second game when I started going for cars and realizing that I love a common objective in all the games that we play. And I think we didn't really focus on those in the first game, but on the left-hand side of the board, you put out tiles that change depending on the game, and then they have speech bubbles on top. So the first person to get 2 cars or 4 cars gets to grab those. And so the second time we played, I was like, oh, it's a game about making cars. Maybe I should make some cars. And so I felt more balanced.
Reed, I will say that I love that when we play, we'll play a game about putting animals in a zoo, and you're like, but what if I didn't? We'll play a game about manufacturing cars, and you're like, but also, what if I didn't? I love your gumption playing games.
There's always a loophole. Maybe not.
Speaking of the speech bubbles and also how thematic this game is, listening to Angela a little bit earlier describe the theme and how the speech bubbles are you get more points because you're the first one talking about that topic, and then as other people talk about it you get less points. That connects in my brain because the first game Reed and I were like, well, why I can't score 3, so why would I put it on the 3 times score condition? I mean, none of you are going to score it either, so it doesn't matter. I'm just going to put it on 2 because that was one of the rules we had missed, that you're always supposed to put it on the top regardless of how much you can score. And I think just kind of playing into how thematic this game is, what you explained, like, that makes so much sense. Of course Sandra doesn't want to hear about this 3 times. Like, I totally get that. And yeah, it's so clever.
I also got to see how this game was kind of meant to, A, not trust your friends, and B, to be a little bit mean. Because Becky had, put out all these beautiful red cars, and then someone that she's married to just was like, dupe. I'm going to put my thing right here and take this red car that you worked very hard for. And then at that point, there was no trust. And it was like, I'm not trusting that Sandra's not going here. I'm not trusting that Gillian's not going here or anybody else. And I think that kind of was like, oh, we actually have to be aware of where we're going.
Yeah, you had to protect your investment in a way. I remember you and Gillian were letting a pair of gray cars go, but I was sitting in the department you had let them go to, and I was like, or I was in a space where I could snag them on the next round because I was at the very bottom in administration, because one of my tactics was actually, so Reed had mentioned it briefly, is that you only get 4 shifts in a day, and each department, except for admin, has a 3 spot or a 2 spot. So that means you could do 3 of the actions in that department or 2 spots, and it depended if someone was on there. Then you'd have to spend an extra shift. The admin department, you could only choose between 1 action or 2 actions, but you could take those actions in any department. So sometimes somebody, namely Reed most often, would block me from a department I wanted to go to, so I would only get the 2 spot. And I was like, well, why don't I go to admin and actually see how the game state is going to change by my turn? And you and Gillian released a bunch of cars, and I was like sitting in admin being like, hell yeah, I'm in admin. I'm taking those cars. I was like, yeah. So it was a fascinating way of watching. If you didn't watch your resources, someone was going to come in and snag it and get the credit for building those cars. Even though you had done all the hard work and maybe even scored some victory points for releasing the car, I was going to get the end goal, which was a car.
And I think that this really benefited from playing 2 games in a row. I think our first play, Gillian would know this, clocked in at 3.5 hours.
Yeah, it was a long one.
It was a long one, 3:40. But then we kept going. We took like a dinner break and then played again. And the second time, I understood more how interconnected things were. Okay, first you have to get the plan to be able to then get the car. You might want to upgrade it, and you need multiple if you're going to upgrade and play a car of the same color. And so I started planning out my turns a lot differently than that. And then I was like, oh no, but the training. And so, yeah, it was an interesting balance again.
I had the same experience as well. The first game, I really struggled to figure out where I needed to go first and what I needed to have here before I got there. And part of it was just we were learning the rules, even to a deeper understanding than the videos. But the second game, I felt a lot better at it. Although I did struggle with, like, I was one of the people as well who pushed a bunch of cars out, and then Gillian took my cars.
I got like 2 cars the entire game, so.
I also did not get enough cars, so the next game we play, I'm going to go hardcore car in this car game.
It's just going to be a game of chicken. Nobody's going to go to manufacturing to actually put cars out, and then we'll just be putzing around in admin.
Yeah, it's interesting because you need to get the cars out, and there are ways to get some extra bonus points by pushing the cars out, but there's no guarantee you're going to make it up to grab that car, and you have to have already planned ahead that you're going to have the plan for that color car and the right parts. If somebody's upgraded it, or if you upgraded the design, then you need to place that to push the car out. So there are a lot of things you have to balance in your brain at the same time.
And sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that you can have all of that figured out, but then somebody sneaks in on your spot, and then you can't even do that until your next turn, and then your car is going to be gone.
Well, it's interesting because the manufacturing space, I feel like you really just need to take advantage of the demand cards that are out there, because the demand cards are a means to get stable, or a stable means to get speech bubbles. And so I found myself mid-game just saying, screw it, I'm not going to try to get the cars that I'm manufacturing. I'm just going to go through the assembly line and put out the ones that'll meet the demand and get the speech bubbles. And that worked okay until I looked over and Angela had like 4 cars built on her little tableau, which didn't make me feel great. And all of them had upgraded parts too.
I know. You went hardcore on the upgrade.
So I only had 3 cars, but they all matched and had double upgrades. And then the upgrades tied into the end game score for one of the colors. And then what I find is fascinating how you score points in this game, which is speech bubbles are needed to even do a final game scoring. So you actually can't score final game objectives unless you have a speech bubble available to pay for that. And I thought that was an interesting dynamic, because you go to these meetings, the meetings allow you to have like 3 cars, get 4 points, 2 points for every car in your, or something like that. But what was interesting is you go to upgrade a plan, which you're like, why would you upgrade a plan? Well, when you did that, it corresponded to a part. That part then corresponded to a vehicle. So engine blocks on red cars, for every engine block piece that you then had on your cars was a multiplier. And it was this sneaky multiplier that would allow you to do these extra pieces. And you're like, oh, it's not just about the car. It's about then having a car with a multiplier, which felt very Brussels for me from the last game we played.
You also beat us by like 60 points in that second game.
Because I had multipliers and cars, and I went vroom vroom, and everybody put them out for me, and I was like, heck yeah. And I stayed just ahead of Sandra. I felt really bad for Gillian, because you can play Sandra either as mean Sandra, which is the default for the game, or you can play her as nice Sandra. So obviously we played mean, duh. And I watched Gillian get screwed and go back, because you can go backwards in points. You start at 15, and he would like lose 7 points, gain all of those points back, lose 6 points, then have to gain all those points back. He got really screwed, where I was like, ooh, girl, that's rough.
Yeah, it was interesting because the first game we played, I did really well against Sandra, and I didn't get penalized from her at all that entire game. I ended up winning the first game. But then the second game, I just don't know what it was about it. I think I was just approaching the game very differently, and I was focusing too much on the certifications, getting the books, and not raking in the shifts, the banked shifts, like I did in the first game. And so, yeah, I was unfortunately on the short end of the stick.
Yeah, I did not bank shifts. the first game and then didn't bank them again until about halfway through the second game. And so if you don't bank shifts, which I can't even think of how to describe that mechanism, but you can opt as one of your bonuses to go up to allow you to bank or store these shifts that you can then use and spend down if you need to get up to 4 shifts, but are on a 2 slot or a 3 slot or even on a 1 slot. And the higher that you are up, the less Sandra penalizes you. And so if you're not very far up, and I think Gillian and I generally played toward the lower end of that, then it's like you can get up to 7 points taken away. And then Becky went up really well. She's always good at these tracks. Like, you're always good on like the perception tracks, things like that. But it was like you only got 1 point taken away a lot of the times. And I was facing with like 7, 6, 5.
Becky believes in overtime shifts, and so that's why she banked all those overtime shifts and said, no thank you, Sandra.
I don't want to be punished. I want to do a good job. And I wasn't getting my training or homework done in time, so it was the best I could do.
You're like, Sandra, not very smart, but gosh golly, I'll work hard for you.
Yes. At the end of the second game, Reed was asking, does this game have staying power? Like, how many times are we going to replay this game? And are you going to always be trying to do the same thing? Which at first, I think I was a little like, how dare you? But the more I thought about it, the more I kind of wondered the same thing. But then I also kept saying, like, oh, well, what about White Castle? Like, we kind of always do the same thing. There's not that much that changes. And what about this game, which I can't remember, but I feel like I listed off 3 games. And I still think it's a good question, though, even though I was like, well, what about this and this? What's the staying power?
Well, it's interesting because this definitely has a lot more overhead than some of those other games, like the White Castle. I think it does have staying power, but I don't think I'd want to break it out as frequently as, say, the White Castle, mainly because the setup and just mental power needed to play it. But I played 2 very different games. We've only played this game twice so far, and I played 2 vastly different games. And my games were the second game in particular felt very much influenced by the other players around the table. So I feel like the worker placement component and where people go, what they do, if they manufacture, if they don't, I feel like all that's going to change the game state a lot throughout the course of a single game to where you won't necessarily always be able to use the same strategy. And so I think that in its own right, and that with the different objective cards changing from game to game, it's randomized. So I think that component or that makes the game the replayability higher than others.
It's interesting because in the White Castle, for example, you have variable cards and you have variable dice that play into the, even if you think you're going to have the same strategy, if you're not able to go to the same place to put out your workers, that might not even be an option, right? And then with this game, it does seem to depend very much on the other players, and the race for turn order is important. And I think that there are some things at each game we're going to be racing toward, and so there is a chance that that could kind of come into play. I didn't think for me that the end meeting objectives and the end game objectives really drove my play. I tried to in the beginning and was just like, this is not something that seems to be worth the risk or the shift to be able to get a couple points off of them. And so I think it would be more a race to the balance, and then you're depending on how the other players are playing, and will we all play the same game each time or try to.
I looked at that question not necessarily about replayability of the game state, because I do think this game has enough staying power that I would play it 12 times, which at 12 plays is $10 a play, which would be really awesome. So that part, not so much, but I do think that question rattled around in my brain is, with such a heavy rules overhead, is this a game you're going to bring out? Like the White Castle, we can play now, we just pop it out and play. We're like, cool, game takes 45 minutes maybe, done, super fun, brain scratchy game. This one is harder because you'd want to flip through and review the rule book one more time before you played. Like in 2 months, I'm not going to be able to open the game and just start playing because some of the rules that we maybe missed on the first time, I think we would forget again. So a good reminder review would be helpful. And I think that is a hard part, is how often is the game going to get to the table? And also, and we ask this, is who are you going to play this game with? And I can't ever break this game out with somebody who doesn't play a lot of board games, who doesn't do worker placement, who I think would be extraordinarily frustrated if you popped this game out on the table. I don't see playing with anybody other than this group, which again limits the number of plays and how often it'll come. So I think about that when I think about replayability, is how often is this going to get tabled? And maybe it doesn't need to get tabled as often as the White Castle, but you do play it 3 or 4 times a year and you play it back to back, because those 3.5 hour play and then the one after, it didn't feel like 3.5 hours. It zipped by. I was shocked when I looked at the clock. Like, it was fun. It made sense. The turns were zippy. Like, it wasn't like somebody was sitting there for 8 minutes with analysis paralysis.
We were all very, very tired by the end. I think we were brain tired by the end.
Not me. I was like, game 3. What do you think, guys?
You know who you'd play it with? Sandra. There's
Absolutely.
a solo mode. I heard it's good.
I think that this game for me reminded me a lot of like Dune Imperium and Dune Imperium Uprising in the worker placement, different tracks and things like that. I know it's not exactly the same, but for me, the setup, who you would play it with, who you would teach it, is really comparable in that I think that those are games that I love playing. I will play anytime. I feel like we've played them enough that we don't need to go back to the rule book. And I think that playing the 2 games back to back of this really helps seal in like what the different mechanics are, what the strategy is. We also are looking forward to playing this soon. We've already made a date to play this again. But while I think that my spouse and one of my other friends would love playing this, it's too expensive for me to commit to at this point, especially if you have it. And the teach, I just don't think I would do well with teaching this game.
And I'd say to your point about Dune Imperium versus this, Dune Imperium has the benefit of having a theme that is very broad. So people love Dune. You know, they'll play a board game about Dune. This is middle management in a car factory. So that doesn't have as broad of an appeal. And I would say with a lot of Vital Lacerda's games are very thematic in general, but they're very, very niche, I would say, almost. And I really appreciate that. He thinks out of the box in terms of theme in a way. Lisboa, for instance, is about the recovery of Lisboa after an earthquake. And so you're dealing with that. This is car manufacturing in a car factory. And so that aspect of it, I think, has something to do with maybe how broad it might reach. But then, of course, there's the complexity, which it's a lot more complex than Dune Imperium is. But I would say this game is if you're interested in heavy games, this is, I would say, a really good entry point, because even though there is a lot of complexity just in the rules overhead itself, the gameplay flows really well. It's easy to understand once you get a couple of turns under your belt. And so that aspect makes it more appealing than most other heavy games, like, say, War of the Ring, which has a lot of very detailed rules.
I agree with you that if you like heavy games, you should definitely give this game a try. I do not care about cars at all. And I don't think the theme made me not want to play it. I was excited to give it a play. And even though it's super thematic, like, I don't feel like the theme took away from the experience of the game, and that, like, I don't care about cars. It all went together so well, and I like crunchy games, and so it was really enjoyable.
I think that we Actually, I'm going to say this for myself. I think that this was an intimidating game to approach. Like, I think we were looking and saying, okay, how many videos do we need to watch? Oh, we're not ready to play this game yet because we haven't had time to prepare. And we haven't played a ton of games recently that are like that, or we get to benefit from games that Becky and Gillian or Angela have already played before. And so, again, this is a game that we're all learning together. Angela took the lead on purchasing the game, thank you, and doing most of the research. But I did really like it. I thought that it was a really smooth play once you figured it out, but I would say that I didn't feel super confident in understanding all the symbols at first. I thought the game was beautifully designed, but I didn't really understand what we were doing until toward the end of the first game. And then thematically, during the learning of this game, I did buy an electric car. So I'm like, maybe it did inspire commerce here.
So regarding theme, one thing that's interesting is this was very appealing to Angela in the middle management aspect. And I was eyeing Kanban EV. I was willing to take the plunge into a Vital Lacerda game. And I was researching different ones, and Kanban was at the top of my list. And then all of a sudden, Angela bought it. So then I started looking at other ones, and I ended up buying Weather Machine. And so that was largely motivated. Well, one, it's very gorgeous, but that has a tie to me as middle management does to Angela, in that it's about research. And so I got my PhD, and so going into this, it's like, oh, you have to get funding from the government to help subsidize the research that you're doing, and then you publish your results to see if the machine is working as expected, or you publish what your findings. That makes things easier for other people to do research. And so that aspect was very exciting to me. And so kind of in the same line of, hey, it's your job.
Is that why I'm interested in Lisboa? Because it's about picking up life after like chaos and fire.
Oh my God. We need to tie everything back into your house burning down. Oh my gosh.
But it's true.
It is kind of true. Yeah, it is about chaos and an earthquake and putting things back together. Also, Gillian, that makes me really want to play Weather Machine, because I loved the ties and themes for this, and it's very niche and it's very narrow and brought me so much joy, and I'm excited to see that in another avenue and aspect of like, here's a very niche thing. The theme tying its way through. I will say that this playing Kanban has made me want to play other Vital Lacerda games, and I know that Kanban has been talked about as the most approachable of his games. So we may struggle with Weather Machine and Lisboa if we pick it up, but this has gotten me excited to play something that carries the theme so nicely throughout.
I did not think that this was I thought I would be crying under the table probably, and I didn't feel like that. It was a joyful play.
Thank you for listening to Board Game Homies. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and drop us a line for your free podcast sticker at Instagram at Board Game Homies, or email us boardgamehomies@gmail.com. Bye-bye. But Ashton didn't get me a present, and so she's like, I feel really bad I didn't get you anything, and we were on this trip, and I was like, that's okay, I don't need stuff. And so we walk into the board game shop, and she's like, pick a game, whatever, this is what I'm getting you. And I was like, walking around being like, I don't really want anything. She's like, what about this game? And I was like, oh, I hear that one's not very good. What about this one? Becky and Gillian own this one. What about this one? I don't know when I would ever get to play that one. What about this one? No, that one's also not very good.
That's why you just put it down and be like, okay, instead of buying me a game, you're committing to playing 3 games with me.
That's what my mom got me for Mother's Day, is that she said that she would play 3 games with me.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah, and then she crushed me 3 times at Azul, so it just made me sad.
Was your Mother's Day gift to your own mother 3, you don't have to play games with me when I ask vouchers?
No, but my father did ask for that for Father's Day.
Whoa! Wow! Brutal.
Very divided household when it comes to interest in playing games.
Oh, sick burn.